Welcome back to Exit Realty Central video training. In this video, this is going to be about the listing agreement. Okay, so as you know, whenever you're going to get a listing, if you're going to have one, you do need to have this listing agreement in place. Okay, so I'm going to go over this form. I'm going to explain to you the sections and how to properly fill it out. Okay, this form will populate in your .loop system when you're going to get an active listing, so you can find it there. And it's also available on Texas Realtors under your zip forms. You should have access. These are what you pay for. Okay, so here we go. It's pretty self-explanatory, most of the parts. Okay, it's very similar to buyer's representation agreements. Okay, so the seller's name is going to go here, all their information here. Okay, the broker is going to be your name, and it's going to be Exit Realty Central here. Okay, address, the zip code, all your info right here on this one. Okay, property. Okay, now the property information, you can find this on CAD. And if you go to the Central Appraisal District and do a search on the property, you will find the lot number, block number, all that stuff. Okay, and the addition, the subdivision name. Okay, and then in here it's going to be El Paso County. Okay, and then known as, and then the address and zip code right here. Okay, pretty self-explanatory there. Okay, the improvements. Okay. The improvements is going to be all the stuff that's permanently attached in the house, very similar to how it says it in the 1 to 4 family contract in the purchase agreement. Okay, it's almost exactly the same. Okay, so this does tell the seller that what's going to stay in the house. Okay, so they don't go around and start removing the screens and shutters and all that. So they will have to and the carpeting. Okay, so they'll have to understand this a little bit. Okay, so do kind of go over this with them a little bit. The accessories, again, very self-explanatory here. All the accessories that go with it, so draperies, curtain rods, swimming pool cleaning equipment, things like that. All that should convey with the house, okay? If it doesn't, you explain to the seller that if there is some stuff that they want to have removed, then they put it here, just like you find in the purchase agreement, in the 1 to 4 contract purchase agreement. The same thing right here. You put, if they're going to take, the drapes, or they're going to take a fancy chandelier that's in there or something like that, okay, then you write it in here. And the purpose for this being in here is that you'll put that in MLS too. You'll put in the confidential remarks, or, sometimes you can put it in the public. Okay, so everybody knows what's not going to stay with the house. Okay, so this is important here. There's a lot of fights over stuff like that. Okay, Homeowners Association, either the property is or is not part of an HOA. Okay, so this is very important. If it is an HOA, you do have to get, you have to have those proper documents for that, have them acquire them. Okay, so do find that out if it is or if it's not an HOA. Okay, listing price. This is the price that you're going to put the house for sale. This is what you both agree on, what the seller agrees to put the price at, and what you agree as well. So this is where you will put that. Okay, listing the price right here. All right, so the term, this is when the listing begins. So this is when it's going to go live, basically. Okay, so if you're going to have the listing show, for example, if we were doing one right now, which today is a Thursday, and we wanted it to go live on a Friday afternoon or Friday morning, then you can put it for tomorrow's date. Okay, and then it ends on, typically it's 6 months. Okay, you usually have a 6-month listing agreement. Okay, unless you otherwise agree to something else, but that's what these 2 dates are. Begins and then ends about 6 months later. Okay, typically. Okay, broker's compensation. Very important here. It's how you get paid. Yes. So when you earn and payable, the seller will pay the broker. Typically, we like to do 6%. Yes. Okay. Under some other circumstances, we can probably do a little less. But basically the main thing is what it's going to be. Okay. So if you're going to do 6%, you put that right here. Okay. 6%. Okay. If it's going to be something else, you put here, if it's going to be 10,000 or whatever, but typically we always do a percentage of it. Okay. Earned. All this is very typical also with the buyer's representation agreement. If you see that video, you'll see me explain all that too. Okay, so this just explains it. It's very self-explanatory on what it's going to be. Okay, and what it means to earn your commission. Okay, so this is important to really understand. Payable is exactly that. Is whenever how it's determined when you're supposed to be paid. Okay, so closed and funded. Okay, so it's important. Just read it. It's pretty self-explanatory on all that stuff there. Okay. Broker's compensation is not payable for if the property does not close and fund. Without, and then it explains all this here. Okay, so legal proceeding. Seller's failure to restore the property, things like that. In case there's a big damage to it. I think so. This kind of gives them a little bit of an out on situations that might not be, out of their control a little bit. Okay. Other compensation breached by buyer under a contract. Okay, so this is self-explanatory. It explains it all right here. Okay, so you just read it and understand it here. Okay. Service providers. Okay, same thing. It tells you real easy, what it means. The service provider stuff right here. Okay. Other fees and reimbursable expenses. This is a little bit important. It depends on what you're going to do. Okay. If you decide that you're going to, for an example, if you take a listing and it's only, let's say 5% or something like that, a little bit low, and you're going to take extra expenses or a better example is, let's say the seller is out of town, okay, or they're just not very capable of maintaining their house. It's been vacant for a long time. Maybe it needs some painting, or needs a lot of yard work, and you volunteer to do that. You say, well, I can hire some contractors or a handyman to go and paint the house or clean the yard and all that. Well, you'll put this, okay, for you to be reimbursed for that. Okay, so you'll get paid for your expenses that you did extra. Okay, so that's where that comes into play right there. Protection period. Okay, the protection period is starting on the day the listing ends and continues for, and you put a term here. Okay, so this, what it is let's say you have a listing for 6 months, and years ago when listings would stay on the market for about 6 months because we had so many of them. A lot of sellers, they will negotiate behind your back with other buyers that were interested in the house and wait for this listing agreement to expire and then sell it from underneath you right after expiration. So this will protect you on that. Okay, you can put 90 days, you can put 180 if you want. Okay, so but typically it's not very long, maybe half of this or something. Okay, so like that, they don't do that. If you do find out that they did sell it right after the listing terminated, we could have an avenue to chase them. Okay. So all this here is pretty self-explanatory, very similar to the buyer's representation agreement. Okay, so you just read it and understand it. Okay, and if you have any questions or anything, I don't want to waste too much time in going over every single word and paragraph on it, just the main basics. But if you do have any questions or any confusion that any of this might have, you can always reach out to us. Okay, and we'll help you and explain it to you. Okay. Okay, so again, right here, this is explanatory, okay, but it will not apply if the seller agrees to sell the property during the protection period. Okay, so all this here goes all together. Okay. In the county, all the amounts payable to the broker are to be paid in cash in El Paso County, right? El Paso County, okay, because that's where we're at. Okay. Very similar to buyer's representation agreement. Okay. Escrow authorization. This instructs the title officer to disperse the payments. Okay, so that's basically what this is. Like that, they don't come back at you and like, oh, what, the title is giving you a check. I thought I was supposed to. Okay, so this is very self-explanatory here. Now this here, this is very important, and that's why it's also in bold. Okay, so notice to public marketing. Okay, if the property is going to be public marketed, MLS rules require, you know, that you list it within 1 day. Okay, and then also so you can put your yard signs, digital marketing, all that kind of stuff. This is important for the seller to understand. Okay, so you will be checking some of these or one of them. Okay, you will file it with one or more listing services, which would be GetPar. Okay, with our MLS here. Okay, if you're also, you know, well, yeah, typically it's just going to be GetPar if you just do it here. Okay, so you will have this checked. Okay, and this here is also if the seller does not want it to be listed. There is some very rare occasions, but there is some that they don't want it to be listed on MLS. They want just to see if you can find a buyer kind of, you know, under the table. They don't want nobody to know that they're selling their property. This usually happens sometimes with very high-end homes or very discreet sellers. You know, maybe they're, you know, it can happen if it's somebody famous or something, you know, and they just don't want any of their information out there. So sometimes it'll be check this. Okay, but most of the time it's always this one here. Okay. All right, so this is also important. MLS requires that you accurately and timely submit all the information that MLS requires to MLS, which means upload it quick. You know, put your information in there. Don't wait 2 weeks or so to put it live after you already have your sign out there and have this agreed and checked. Okay, because it's a little bit deceptive. Some agents, they don't put it out there and they're just hoping to get some activity off their sign, which typically does work. Okay, but if you're not putting it on MLS, you did tell your seller that you were going to list it on MLS. Okay, and if you're not, that can be considered a pocket listing, and that is deceptive, and it goes against the Real Estate Act, and your license can be severely disciplined by the state. Okay, so do keep that in mind here. Okay, that's what it says here. Okay, if they don't want you to put it on MLS, and this one is also going to be checked here. Okay, so it will not be in any MLS listing. Okay, so, and if they don't want it to be an MLS, they need to understand all this, that hey, you know what, other agents, nobody else is going to know. You know, that's basically what it is. No one else is going to know that it's for sale except for you and whoever you tell. Okay, this very self-explanatory. All the definitions, you know, it explains it here real easy. Okay, so, you know, this again, it's very self-explanatory. The seller gives you non-exclusive, irrevocable rights, you know, royalty fee, license to use. Okay, let's see here, what else we got. Okay, so access to the property. Okay, access to the property, that's exactly what it is. Okay, so you access in reasonable times, you put your lockbox on there. Okay, so it would be, you know, they will provide extra keys, you know, they access to appraisers, you know, other contractors, things like that. You know, make it easy to show. Okay, so they agree to that. Okay, so it can be a little easier to show. Okay, scheduling companies. Broker may engage the following companies to schedule appointments and authorize others to access the property. Okay, this is usually if you have another, you know, company that assists you in scheduling appointments or things like that. Okay, so that's, you know, that's usually what would go right here. Okay, a key box. Okay, this is the lockbox. Okay, so and it says right here, this is so the seller can read it and understand what it is. Okay, so like that, they know what it is. You know, it's opened by, where does it say right here? Okay, a special combination or program device so that authorized persons may enter in the seller's absence. Okay, so, and it tells them, you know, they will increase the amount of showings, but involves some risk, you know, unauthorized entries, things like that. So like that they can understand, you know, the risk is very minimal. I've never really heard of anybody breaking a lockbox to break into the house. It's easier just to break the door or a window to get in there than to break those boxes. Okay, so, and then this, very important, make sure one of these is checked. If they want, there is some listings that they do not want lock boxes on there. Okay, sometimes with very high-end houses, or if they have a lot of expensive stuff in there, or they just don't want people coming in without nobody knowing, they might not want you to put a lockbox. Okay, it's very rare now that I see, but sometimes they do want the key to be at listing office or something like that, which makes it quite difficult, but it does still happen. Okay, it just depends on the seller. We had a listing a little while back that was the case. No lockbox, no sign, very difficult, and the house did not sell. Okay, so it was very difficult. Okay, so anyways, okay, so and this is if a tenant occupies the property, the seller will furnish the broker or all the signed authorization. Okay, if you don't get that signed authorization, you may remove the lockbox from the property. Okay, because since the tenant lives there, they still have a right expectation of privacy because their lease is still in effect. Okay, limitation liabilities. Okay, very self-explanatory here. Okay, so except if the loss is caused by the broker, which is you leave the door open, that's something like that, something negligent, and somebody just walks in and damages it, they could kind of come after you a little bit, but you're not really responsible, okay, for personal injury, things like that. Okay, all right, cooperation with other brokers, very important right here. Some agents are not filling this out. Okay, this is very important. Make sure that you do put this here. Okay, so this basically states, okay, that you will pay what you're going to pay the buyer's agent or buyer's broker. Okay, so if you're going to do 6%, 3, right? We give half. If you're doing 5, 2.5. Okay, if you're doing 7, good for you. Okay, 3.5. Okay, so that's how this goes. Okay, do make sure that has it like this. Non-MLS brokers, it's very rare you see that, but sometimes you do. They just don't want to pay the fees or trying to be a little cheap about it. It's going to be basically the same thing. Okay, we don't really financially penalize them. Well, you're not an MLS broker or agent, so I'm only going to give you 1%. It's not. We don't really. I haven't really heard of anybody doing that here or in New Mexico. Okay, or anywhere for that matter. Okay, so it will be half here. This here, you don't really have to put, unless if you negotiated a set flat fee. If they're just going to pay you $5,000, let's say, for example, well, they'll say, it doesn't matter what the price is, I'll give you $5,000, you put $2,500. I have not really seen, in all my years in this industry, I have not really seen that. Okay, I have seen flat fees to other buyers, though, to the buyer's agents. I have seen recently a flat fee of $1,000 or something like that. So that's what you would put here. But if that is the case, something like that, it's going to be a special circumstance because your seller is very strapped for money or something. They're not going to clear anything. They're very upside down. And this, you'll talk to us, okay? Because this is special. Don't just go in and negotiate that on your own. Okay, so we need to be a little careful with that. Okay, so half of the percentage. Sub-agent, you do need to know what a sub-agent is. I hope you do know. If you don't, you can look it up. Trek, it has very good articles that say it, and a Google search will tell you as well. Okay, just make sure you read it from a reputable source. But sub-agent, same definition across the country. Okay, sub-agent's gonna be the same. Okay, so it's gonna be 3%. Sub-agent can also be the buyer's agent that's coming from your same office. Okay, so we'll have that. So these should match. Okay, it should match. Okay. Intermediary status, same thing as if it was in the buyer's representation agreement. It has the same thing. This is pretty much verbatim on it. Okay, so this is if your primary obligation is to your listing, right? They're your clients, so you have the listing. But if you do come up with a buyer yourself, then you could use one of these options that are here, 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so you might appoint another associate to service, either one of them to help you out or to service the buyer side. Like that, there's no conflicts or anything, or there's no accusations of unfairness. Okay, or you might just not make any appointments and serve as a transaction broker or sales associate. Okay, So that's what these say, you know, and it's all in special circumstances, okay? I mean, you know, sometimes a long time ago when I was with another office with Century 21, we had that situation. We had a listing and it was a big mess, and the broker actually stepped in and took the buyer away and put somebody else in to handle the buyer side, okay? And with good reason, okay? Good reason on that, okay? No intermediary status, okay? So this is if the seller does not want you to show buyers who you represent, okay? So, but we typically don't really check that unless it's very unique circumstance, okay? This is self-explanatory too, okay? You're not going to be gossiping, you're not going to be discussing confidential information, things like that, okay? So this is so your seller can read it and feel more comfortable with it, okay? Confidential information, you will not be disclosing confidential information, okay? All right, so this, okay, broker's authority, okay, so the broker is you, okay? So broker will use reasonable efforts to act diligently to market the house, okay? So, you know, you're gonna be, you know, advertising it, you're putting it on MLS, okay? Telling all your buddy agents or any other prospects that you have, okay? This important right here. MLS also gives you that feature. When you're listing it, it does ask you, you know, if you want it to be listed on other third-party apps and be shown on the internet, which is going to be forwarded to Realtor.com and Zillow and Trulia, all that stuff. Okay, so this is important. Most sellers, and except the ones that don't want it to be on MLS, will not really say anything about this stuff. Okay, if they don't want it displayed on the internet, well, you know, then you'll have one of these checked. Okay. Now, this here, okay, the broker is authorized to market the property with these finance options, okay? So this will help you also when you fill out the MLS, okay? So, and this, you're also gonna have to use a little bit of your best judgment on the house. If it's in really good shape, okay, you can use all of them, okay? You can kind of go with everything. If it's not, and also a lot of sellers, they don't want VA or FHA, they just don't want to mess with that. They don't want to have vendor required repairs or things like that. So sometimes they just don't want that. Or if it's very run down property, it just simply won't qualify for any government insured loans or government guarantee loans. So that's when, you know, you won't check that. It would just be cash or conventional. Okay, so that'll be something that, you know, you will come to agreement with your seller and use your best judgment on that too. Okay, and see if the house also owner financing. Some sellers will agree to owner financing, okay, but a lot of them typically don't, okay? Okay, so now in accordance with the MLS rules, okay, you may advertise the house. This is gonna say how you're gonna put it, you know, place a for sale sign. And remember, TREC rule, the Real Estate Act does require this agreement so that you can put a sign on their front yard. Without this agreement, you putting a sign in their front yard is a very hefty penalty from the state. Okay, so do keep that in mind. You can never do a listing without this agreement in place. Okay. Okay, so all this self-explanatory. Okay, so it gives you the authority of what you're gonna do. Okay, so and in this too, if it gives you authority, you can advertise a property as sold once you sell it. Okay, so this self-explanatory. Okay, you know, so this is what the seller is gonna. This is the seller's obligations, really. You know, and their disclosures in a way. Okay, so the seller is not currently delinquent on any loans. Seller does have a simple title, and, you know, it does have peaceful possession of the property. Okay, so it basically says that they are authorized to sell it. They don't have any outstanding, you know, heavy tax liens or back homeowners association fees or going into foreclosure, things like that. Okay, home equity loans. If they do, then you got to put it here. Okay, and the same thing here, you know, seller is not aware of any liens or encumbrances against the property except for whatever you put here. And here, this is also a very important one. If that does come up, title will stop it. from closing. Okay, they will see that big thundercloud in there. Okay, so do explain to them, are you aware of anything like this that can? And typically they know. Sometimes when this does come up, it's because they did a lot of work on the property and they never paid the contractor. So then the contractor will go and put a workman's lien on it, and they'll get a judgment, and then they cannot sell the property without paying that contractor first. Okay? Relocation company, if they have anything like that, self-explanatory, they'll just put it in here. Okay? Seller's additional promises. Okay? So this is just, they're not going to rent it out without telling you. They're not going to negotiate without telling you. Things like that. So just read it and just explain it to them, have them see it. Okay, limitation of liability. Okay, this is for their information. Okay, so that you're not responsible for frozen pipes or things like that. Okay, so that's basically what all that says right here. Okay, special provisions in case there's any other special instructions in there or any other information that they give you that you need to be made aware of, and maybe put it in confidential remarks to MLS or something. Then it'll be written in here. Okay, this is the ramifications if defaults happen. Okay, mediation, it's going to go mediation, your attorney's fees, things like that. Okay, and this is also this is checked by default because of course the law requires that you provide this information to broker services. Okay, if they do have a seller's disclosure notice already filled out, okay, you can check all this here. You can always get that a little bit later. If they if there is a tenant and you need a key box authorization by the tenant, okay, so you'll check all that stuff. Condominium, if it is a condo, all that stuff. Okay, if you're requesting their mortgage information, okay, so it's mandatory, just like the one for contract. Okay, so this is all the definitions. Okay, this is the additional notices for them. Okay, Fair Housing Act, you're not going to be discriminating, all that kind of stuff. Okay, the federal law stuff and all this kind of stuff. Okay, this is to advise them, remove, secure all your jewelry. This is very important. Okay, if you are fortunate, you got yourself a listing and they're still occupied and they have a lot of stuff in there, do tell them this. Okay, you cannot, as I do home inspections as well, so I go into different houses every single day, and you will be very surprised at all this stuff I do see laying around everywhere. Guns is a big one. Okay, Las Cruces has a lot of firearms everywhere, and they are just laying around everywhere, and it's pretty surprising. This is the same way. It's prescription drugs. I see jewelry laying around everywhere. Sometimes I'll see piles of money. I mean, people must be very trusting something. Okay, but do tell them to take that off. Okay, don't have it there. There is a lot of thievery, and it's not good. You don't want to be blamed for it. So do tell them to secure all their valuables and don't leave any guns laying around there like that. Okay. Yeah, broker advises the seller to consult with an attorney. Things like that. Okay. This also, okay, so this is very common because a lot of sellers do already have surveillance to record, and monitor the buyers, but there's ways. I mean, if the cameras are very obvious, unless you have a lot of hidden cameras somewhere, but pretty much everybody knows when there's cameras. People do place them in pretty obvious places to be a good deterrent. Okay, so, and then they also need to understand this. I have had customers that they get very angry when either I'm in there as the inspection taking my pictures or when the buyers go in there or whatever, even in my clients, they would say, I don't want nobody photographing my house or things like that. So do tell them that, hey, sometimes they're going to video it so they can show their parents or they can see it again or whatever. Okay, so they don't get all upset about stuff like that. Okay, all this other stuff, self-explanatory. If it was built before 1978, the lead-based paint stuff. If the seller is a foreign person by federal law, okay, so that's when this is going to be. This is for tax purposes. Okay, I know this is very complicated with the IRS and all that stuff. Title and the mortgage will calculate all this. Okay, so you don't have to be, worried too much about all that kind of stuff. But they will do all that stuff, and the title and all that they'll take care of all that. But do ask them that. Okay. All right, and that is really about it on this. Okay, so it's also very important. Okay, make sure that they don't send out their personal information on the email and things like that. Okay, this obvious. Okay, broker's printed name, the broker's license number. This here is you, right? Okay, your name, and then the date, and then this is your signature. Okay, remember, broker's associate, that's you. Okay, all right. So, and then seller's printed name, seller's signature. Do get both. If they're married, do get both. Okay, so just like if you all have watched my CMA video, when you're going to do a CMA presentation or anything, do make sure that they are both in the house when you do a presentation. Don't waste your time like that. Okay. And then also like that, because a quick story, if you're going to do it and you're only presenting to the wife and the husband has no idea the wife is wanting to sell the house, well, it's not going to sell, because something's going to happen between now and closing, and you just wasted all this time and effort. Okay, so that explains this form. I hope this helps you. Again, if you do have any questions or anything, you can always come to us with anything that you need. Okay, but hopefully it helps you, and we'll see you on the next training. All right.